Dysmenorrhea is a painful menstruation. It's a painful type. Now, so many, ladies or girls, they develop this painful menstruation. Okay, painful type of menstruation. Now, why is this? Let's talk about it in this class. So this is painful menstruation and may be primary or secondary to the organic pelvic disease. Sometimes we don't know the cause. Uh, you know, it happens right from the menarche and it remains there for a long time. This is known as primary uh, dysmenorrhea. And sometimes there are certain disorders or diseases in the uterus or in the nearby area, and painful menstruation occurs because of that, and we call them secondary. That is the basic difference. In most women, menstruation is associated with some degree of pelvic discomfort. Slight discomfort is considered normal because remember, during menstruation, there is a spasm of the uterine musculature because the shedding is occurring, and the uterus should contract to push that thing, isn't it? So a bit of discomfort is considered normal, but sometimes the pain is excessive, the pain is unbearable. Okay, the lady even cannot go to the office or school or college, wherever she was going. Means some, you know severe pain will occur. So this is definitely pathological. In half, menstruation is associated with pain, which often may not be limited to the menses. And in about 10%, symptoms are severe enough to enforce bed rest as well. So this is an introduction about dysmenorrhea. Let's move on. Now see this, look at this slide. Okay, she is having severe pain, and because of this she is distraught, visibly distraught here. There is a role of prostaglandins, we'll talk about it. Okay, to fight with this pain, painkillers are very much essential here. Sometimes she may apply hot pack, okay, just to soothe, for the soothing type of experience. Sanitary napkins should be used here because this is a case of menstruation, and sometimes the pain is so severe that even antispasmodic injections may be necessary, and this is purely because of uterus spasm or contraction of the uterus. So in short, you already got the concept of dysmenorrhea from this slide. Now let's talk about primary and secondary dysmenorrhea one after other. Primary dysmenorrhea describes the painful menstruation in the absence of detectable pelvic pathology. The uterus should be normal, okay? And on top of that, if a lady is having dysmenorrhea, then it is primary one. It generally starts a year or so after the menarche. Okay, so it occurs right from that time. The peak incidence is between 15 and 25 years of age. The patient complains of cramping type of pain. It's very cramping type of pain or colicky type of pain in the lower abdomen, which may radiate to the inner surface of the thigh and even the lower back. So this is a crampy or colicky type of pain. Pain is usually first noticed about 24 hours before the menstruation and rarely persists for more than 48 to 72 hours. You see there. Okay, it will start even before the menstruation, 24 hours before menstruation, and persist for 2 to 3 days. 2 to 3 days. It may be accompanied by nausea and vomiting, and the symptoms usually decrease with the age. If the same ladies here, for example, become 30 or 35 years of age, and probably during that time she is already married, she already given birth to some babies. So during that time, this dysmenorrhea decreases. Okay, so this is seen usually in the normal population. Now, why it occurs? What are the etiology? You see this? Okay, The one of the important cause is increased uterine activity or increased uterine contraction. It may result from either excessive synthesis of prostaglandins or from increased myometrial sensitivity to them. We all know prostaglandins, okay, causes the uterine contractility or it increases uterine contractility. They are powerful types of, a contractility agent. So they are the main reason for dysmenorrhea. Another is ischemia. There is hypercontraction of the myometrium in this case, which may reduce blood flow, and that blood reduction in blood flow causes uterine angina and resulting in crampy pain. Okay, uterine angina means decreased blood flow to that part. We are just comparing this with the angina which occurs in the chest, because of the decreased blood flow to the heart. The similar type of situation. Another is vasopressin. Now, vasopressin is a hormone, and from where vasopressin is released? From where? What is the natural source of vasopressin? Anyone?
Posterior pituitary gland, ADH.
Very good, excellent. ADH, isn't it? It is stored in the posterior pituitary, but frankly speaking, it is synthesized by hypothalamus. Okay, synthesized by hypothalamus. But you can easily say that answer. This is often raised in a case of dysmenorrhea, and it may be important as it increases both the synthesis of prostaglandins and it increases the myometrial activity. And one important evidence is there for the role of vasopressin here, and that evidence is, see here, the role of vasopressin may help to explain why treatment with prostaglandin synthetase inhibitor is not always effective. Now, we give mefenamic acid very commonly to these ladies. Mefenamic acid is one type of NSAID, okay, or naproxen, or ibuprofen, or diclofenac, all those different type of drugs. Many of them will get better after taking this medicine, but some of them are still having a lot of pain even after taking those drugs. And this mechanism explains, because vasopressin is not, inhibited by taking those medicine. That's why it is still causing pain in some of them. So this is a indirect evidence of the role of vasopressin there. Another one is the psychological factors. Now say this. The psychological factor plays a very important role actually. Now, when the lady develops menarche, and for few years she develops severe pain, but because of that experience which she had in the subsequent period also, whenever the time is coming for the menstrual period, she thinks, no, I will have severe pain once again when the menstruation starts. So that type of psychological impact is there. Okay, and it may run in the family. For example, a mother, okay, who is having this type of experience, she may induce the same expectation in her daughter, and when that daughter starts period, then she may have this type of feeling again. So psychological factors play a role here. Now a bit about pathogenesis. See here please. There is increased production of endometrial PGF2 alpha. This is a type of prostaglandin which leads to dysrhythmic uterine contraction. This is dysrhythmic, means uncoordinated uterine contraction, leads to hypercontractility and increased uterine muscle tone that results in uterine ischemia. Okay, uterine ischemia because of excessive contractility. Because of increased prostaglandin production, okay, the lady may suffer from nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea as well via the stimulation of GI tract smooth muscle. So nausea, vomiting is very, very common in case of primary dysmenorrhea. Even diarrhea can occur sometimes. Now there's another picture which is included here to explain very nicely so that you can develop the concept here. Okay, so all these things are shown. Corpus luteum regression, progesterone is decreased. Okay, progesterone is decreased. Then it starts the menstrual flow. Okay, during this time there is a release of prostaglandin. We all know prostaglandin play important role during the menstrual cycle. Okay, then what happens here? Because of this prostaglandin, there will be contraction of the uterine musculature, and if there is excessive level of PGF2 alpha, a type of prostaglandin, there will be dysrhythmia, a dysrhythmic contraction, okay, uncoordinated contraction and prolonged type of contraction. That is the main cause of dysmenorrhea. Okay, when the contraction is heavy, there is slight amount of ischemia on the uterus, and that can further aggravate the pain. Okay, and all these things are there. So this is known as primary dysmenorrhea. Now, on the other hand, what is secondary dysmenorrhea then? Secondary dysmenorrhea describes painful menstruation which is attributable to the pelvic pathology. So certainly certain pelvic diseases are there. It is uncommon before the age of 25 years. The precise clinical picture is determined by the underlying cause. What cause is causing this secondary dysmenorrhea or leading secondary dysmenorrhea? It depends on that. And usually it may be associated with menorrhagia, dyspareunia, or infertility. The menorrhea is heavy bleeding, heavy menstrual cycle, either the quantity or the length. Dyspareunia is a painful sexual intercourse or infertility, unable to conceive. So all these are associated features of secondary dysmenorrhea. If you take a good history, these features may be there. Now, look at this. What are the causes of secondary dysmenorrhea? They include endometriosis, very important cause. Endometriosis, pelvic inflammatory disease, PID, submucosal fibroid. This is a type of fibroid. We have taken a extensive class about this. There are different types of fibroid. Can you name what are the different types of fibroid right now? Yes. What are the different types? Fibroid. Anyone?
Intramural, submucosal, and subserosal and subparasitic fibroid.
Excellent. Excellent. Very good. These are the different types. So these are submucosal, okay, which we are talking right now. Submucosal means right below the mucosa, and there is a high chance that it will hang into the endometrial cavity. Subserosal means outer surface of the uterus, okay, and intramural means right in the wall of the uterus, intramural. And sometimes they may get detached, especially the subserosal may get detached and attaches on some other organ, and they may receive their blood supply from there. This is another parasitic fibroid. Different types are there. Okay, this is the way to revise. Endometrial polyp which is grown in the endometrial cavity. Intrauterine contraceptive device, IUCD we call. These are a type of contraception, and some of the lady, okay, they want this type of contraception. Copper T is one of the type here. Okay, ovarian cyst, cervical stenosis. Now cervix is stenosed here, and after cervix is stenosed, the blood flow cannot come outside. It will be collected there, and it can lead to irregular type of contraction. Adenomyosis. Now, do you still remember what is adenomyosis? Yes? Anybody? What is adenomyosis?
Sorry, adenomyosis is, sir, is when the endometrial glands break into the myometrial layer of the uterus.
Exactly. Very good. Very good answer. Adenomyosis, almost like endometriosis. It's a type of endometriosis. It is described like that in some of the textbook because the endometrial glands or the endometrium is present inside the muscle here. Okay, it is present inside the muscle. So this condition is known as adenomyosis. So the uterus is bulky, it is enlarged in size, and naturally it will have heavy bleeding. History of sexual abuse or other psychological problem can be a cause of secondary dysmenorrhea as well. So most of these, leads to excessive menstrual flow along with dysmenorrhea, but not always. There is one condition which is very typical called cervical stenosis. There is no menstrual flow at all, or flow is very, very minimal, but pain is excessive because of the collection of the blood inside. Now, how to diagnose it? Now, for the diagnosis, we should take a very good history. Okay, so full gynecological history should be taken, and the particular attention should be given to the onset of dysmenorrhea and relation to the menses. Now, from when it started, if it started right after menarche or from that time, then probably this is a case of primary dysmenorrhea. If it occurs after the age of 25 or 30, probably this is a type of secondary dysmenorrhea. Okay, this is important point. And relation to the menses is also quite important. For example, before the start of mens, 1 days before usually, and up to 2 to 3 days, again very common in primary type of dysmenorrhea rather than secondary one. Asks about the use of intrauterine contraceptive device, whether they are having it or not. Who knows? They may be having this IUCD inside the uterine cavity, and that is the cause of dysmenorrhea. So you got the diagnosis just from the history. Asks about the history of dyspareunia, menorrhagia, or infertility, which are very common in secondary dysmenorrhea rather than primary. Regarding the general examination, include all of these things. Okay, general as well as systemic examination. Bimanual pelvic examination or speculum examination is an important part of the examination process. First, okay, speculum bimanual pelvic examination is done, and then anything suspicious, you go for speculum examination in detail. Look for the polyp, which may be protruding through the cervical os, and for enlargement, tenderness, or fixity of the uterus or adnexa. So these are the different things you get from this examination. Now see here, bimanual pelvic examination means you use both of your hand. Okay, one hand is inserted into the vagina. Okay, and another hand is on the anterior abdominal wall, and with the help of this hand, you palpate different type of things there. If there are some mass, if there is uterine enlargement, if there are adnexal mass, you can easily feel or palpate them. And if there is something in the cervix, you can easily see that with speculum examination. This is always done in gynecological practice. Now, there are certain specialized investigation which can we use, like laparoscopy. Laparoscopy is excellent type of investigation for the diagnosis of endometriosis. It can confirm the diagnosis. Dilatation and curettage may be necessary, again for the confirmation. What is happening inside the endometrial cavity? So what we do, we take a small piece of tissue from the endometrium. This is done by dilating the cervix first and inserting the curette there, okay, and getting a small piece of endometrial tissue. This is known as dilatation and curettage. There are two purposes for this. One is diagnostic purpose, another is therapeutic purpose. TNC can be done for therapeutic purpose as well. Another is called hysteroscopy. Okay. Hysteroscopy. Now, hysteroscopy is an endoscopic examination of the uterine cavity. It will reveal any polyp, whatever polyps are there. It can also reveal submucous leiomyoma, or submucosal fibroid, okay, which may be missed on curettage, because curettage is blind type of procedure. You have not seen directly there. And if you are doing curating or curettage in those areas which are not abnormal, then you will not get anything. Okay, so hysteroscopy is much better than curettage alone. Okay, so let's move on. Now, how do we manage the case of dysmenorrhea? Let's talk about the management. This is a very important lecture, not from the exam point of view, but from the practical point of view, because like inside our family itself, so many of the female members, they complain of dysmenorrhea, and some of them are really incapacitated during that time. They cannot do anything during that time. So how to manage it? If we know the things, we can really help them. So let's pay attention here. The first type of drugs are NSAID, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. And the commonly used drugs are mefenamic acid, naproxen, and ibuprofen. But any other types also can be used here. Okay, this mefenamic acid is very, very commonly used for this purpose. 500 milligram per oral, 3 times a day can be given. These NSAID inhibit the synthesis of prostaglandins and are effective in 80 to 90% of the cases. Okay, because they decrease the synthesis of prostaglandin, and by doing so, they decrease the contractility of the uterus. Another type of management is the use of oral contraceptive pill. This is called combined oral contraceptive pill. Don't only give estrogen here. You have to give both estrogen as well as progesterone, the combined oral contraceptive pill. It will reduce the menstrual flow and inhibit ovulation. Okay, inhibit ovulation. Primary dysmenorrhea is generally associated with ovulation. Thus, the oral contraceptive pill will often relieve the primary dysmenorrhea. Now, let me clarify this. Why dysmenorrhea occurs? Dysmenorrhea occurs for the passage of that menstrual blood. Okay, and that menstrual blood is passed outside after ovulation only. That means it is only occurring in the ovulatory cycle. If ovulation doesn't occur, there is no menstruation and there is probably no dysmenorrhea. Okay, so this is the concept here. They are particularly useful in situations where contraception also is required. Yes, because they give negative feedback to the anterior pituitary and hypothalamus, so they can be used as a very, very important tool of contraception, and they may be combined with NSAID for this purpose as well. So these are second type of drugs. If the above measures are ineffective, then further management should be sought. Means other treatments that may then be used include some other drugs. Have a look here. These are called levonorgestrel releasing intrauterine system. These levonorgestrel are type of progesterone. Tocolytic agents like salbutamol, calcium channel blocking agents like nifedipine, and even patches of glyceryl trinitrate. Now, can you tell me one common effect of all these three drugs in the uterus? What are the common effect of all these three drugs? Yes?
It will dilate the uterus.
Exactly.
Dilate the
Sir,
Bronchodilator.
they relax the smooth muscles of the uterus.
Exactly. Rather than dilation, I use the term relaxation here. Okay. Yes. If you are using blood vessel, then dilation is a better term. But in the muscle, use contraction or relaxation. So they relax. They inhibit the contraction. So they relax the muscle there. And this is all about excessive contractility of the uterus, which is causing the pain. So these substances are helpful here. And this progesterone is also a relaxing type of hormone. That's why it is used here. Non-drug treatments such as transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation or even behavioral therapy may be helpful. Remember, there is a role of psychiatric, features. Okay. There is a role of, familial history here. There may be a role of excessive thinking about that, excessive negative type of thinking that near to the pregnancy or a few years later, than menarche, rather than pregnancy, I should say menarche there. If the lady was having this type of dysmenorrhea, then she thinks, I'll have this forever throughout the reproductive age, I'll have this, or maybe my daughter will also have it, my sister will also have it. That type of thinking is there. So behavioral therapy is a component of the management. If there is doubt concerning the diagnosis, then pelvic pathology may be investigated by laparoscopy and hysteroscopy along with curettage. This is always necessary. If you suspect it may be a secondary type of dysmenorrhea rather than primary, you should always rule that out by certain investigation. Now, how we manage secondary dysmenorrhea? The treatment is dependent upon the cause, definitely. If it is because of endometriosis, the treatment is different. If it is because of PID, treatment is different. If it is because of IUCD or intrauterine contraceptive device, treatment is different. If it is because of cervical stenosis, treatment is different. So it depends on the cause. It should take into account the patient's age, desire for conception, severity of the symptom, and the extent of the disease. The different points are noted there, and accordingly the treatment is planned. Okay, but one common type of treatment is we can give NSAID for the quick relief of the pain, and then find out what is the cause of secondary dysmenorrhea and manage accordingly. Okay, so with this, let me stop.